Welcome to Power Tips, your source for fast, easy, actionable success tips, a feast for the mind, and a fast track to shaping your brain for success. FEAST is more than just an acronym for fast, easy, actionable success tips. It refers to the kind of knowledge your brain is hungry for, knowledge that is immediately useful for fast tracking you to success as you imagine it. Each series in Power Tips focuses on a specific skill and provides you with proven strategies for success. This series provides you with Power Tips for developing one of the most valuable abilities on earth, and that's the ability to influence irresistibly. When you have mastered the art of influence, people will willingly follow your lead, help you accomplish your goals, and comply with just about every request. So get ready to feed your mind, fuel your genius, and embark on a fun and fascinating journey that can enhance your life in ways you might not even have imagined. In the Irresistible Influence series, I'm going to provide you with proven influence strategies that will give you two big advantages. The first advantage is that you can use these strategies to easily, effortlessly, and ethically inspire others to help you achieve your goals. The second is that you'll be able to recognize when others are attempting to use these influence strategies on you and can make more conscious choices. I'm Dr. Sherry Buffington, a psychologist, consultant, trainer, business leader, and product developer whose entire focus for the past 30 years has been understanding human nature and the core factors for success. Factors such as motivation, negotiation, persuasion, selling, effective communication, leadership, and other forms of influence, which led me to the study of how the mind, especially the subconscious mind, functions and how it irresistibly influences just about everything we do. In this series, I'm going to share with you some powerful but little-known strategies which you can put to use immediately to change your life and outcomes in very significant ways. The reason these influencers are so powerful and often irresistible is because they trigger subconscious drivers that few people are even aware of and fewer still know how to direct. As long as these influencers remain outside of conscious awareness, they run on automatic. You can only control them by becoming conscious of them, and once you can control them, you're in a very powerful position of influence. This series is designed to help you develop irresistible influence and use it ethically, because influence on a grand scale develops around a good reputation, and ultimately there's no greater power than that. The power of influence is often presented as some magical technique which only a few people can pull off. In reality, it's a totally predictable and very fascinating science that anyone can learn. Because scientists now have the ability to look at living brains, we now know that every time we learn a new fact or skill, our brain changes both functionally and physically. The brain literally builds new synaptic pathways to support the new knowledge or skills and forms new patterns to support it. You can change the way you think, how you feel, and what you do, and using the science of influence, you can also influence others to do all that too. The process of reshaping neural pathways is called neuroplasticity, and it continues throughout life in response to learning. And once a neural pathway is established, it automatically and effortlessly directs your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and outcomes. And that's the real magic. How it all happens is the science. But there's also an art to irresistible influence, and it's through learning the art that you'll be able to manage your own mind and irresistibly influence others. In this series, I'm going to share the science with you and give you some fast, easy, actionable steps you can take that will make perfecting the art fun and fascinating. Irresistible influence begins and ultimately ends right here in the subconscious mind. And it's here, discovering how to use the always consistent and dependable rules of the subconscious mind, that you will learn this invaluable skill. You may be familiar with the often used cognitive triangle that presents a pattern of thoughts leading to feelings or emotions, and emotions leading to behaviors. Within this triangle, behaviors evoke another thought or lead to an outcome. This model is called a cognitive triangle for a reason. It's a completely conscious process. Many people look at this pattern and assume that all outcomes begin with a thought. Here, the claim is that thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, and actions lead to outcomes. From a conscious perspective, this seems to be true, but it's only part of the picture. In reality, the decision-making cycle begins much earlier, and unless you know how to influence decisions in the earliest stages, you're likely to meet with a lot of resistance. The decision-making process actually begins with the introduction of stimuli, which can be anything that triggers a stored memory or forgotten event. A certain sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, a texture, a tone of voice, certain words, a song, even a particular kind of day or environment. The stimulus triggers a subconscious feeling, which sends the subconscious mind in search of related files and programs. These get associated with the appropriate subconscious story, and the story generates a conscious thought. Then we have the chain of conscious events described in the cognitive triangle, which can either lead to another thought or to an action which leads to an outcome. Because most people believe actions are driven by thoughts, they try to influence others by influencing their thinking. What occurs at a conscious level is not influence, however. It's skepticism, information filtering, resistance, and noncompliance, which is why attempts at influencing the attitudes and actions of others typically fail so miserably. We can influence people at the level of thought only when the thoughts are completely aligned with subconscious objectives, and that's rare even though the subconscious mind has only two primary objectives and two measures for whether a suggestion is accepted or rejected. The two primary objectives of the subconscious mind are physical survival and conceptual survival. Biologists believe that the primary drive for a living organism is physical survival. That might be true for an amoeba and other lower forms of life, but it is not true for humans. Although maintaining the physical body is the primary activity of the subconscious mind, because it has a lot of systems to keep running and an estimated 60 trillion cells to manage, managing all that is not the primary goal. The primary goal is conceptual survival. Conceptual survival refers to non-physical survival, a sense of mental and emotional well-being, satisfaction and contentment. That state of being we call happiness. If that were not true, if physical survival was our highest goal, people would not be able to eat, drink, drug, or lifestyle themselves to death, and certainly couldn't commit suicide in pursuit of what they believe will lead to happiness. Our conceptual self consists of the core wants, needs, values, and beliefs we hold about what's good to do, what's bad to do, what life is about, what other people should or should not do, whether we adhere to a religion, and if so, which one we think is right, which political party we identify with, what kind of work has value, and so much more. And we can be pretty black and white about our position. Maintaining our concept of who we are and what life is about is the #1 driver of you, me, and absolutely everyone else. As you might have guessed by now, irresistible influence comes from tapping into the wants, needs, values, and beliefs that make up an individual's conceptual self and aligning your request with one or more of them. But getting to know someone well enough to know what perceptions they hold can take time, and in many instances we don't have the time or the inclination to dig that deeply. Fortunately, you don't have to. The subconscious mind operates on a precise set of rules from which it never varies, and the core drivers that the rules support are basic to all human beings. In this series, I'll be showing you how to tap into those core drivers to become irresistibly influential. In subsequent sessions, we'll keep homing in closer and closer until you have a treasure trove of ways to influence people. We'll start with the 4 basic motivators because they're the most universal and can be applied on a broad scale. I've arranged them so their first letters form the acronym BASE to help you remember them. The 4 basic motivators are belonging, appreciation, significance, and ego gratification, which we experience as happiness and a healthy sense of self. In upcoming Irresistible Influence segments, I will give you some strategies you can use to tap into each of these basic drivers. In this part, I'm going to share 2 of the many universal influencers. The easy agreement strategy, which you will no doubt recognize if you've ever bought a car, because car salespeople use it all the time. And the second is subtle suggestions, which most of us receive and send many times a day. I mentioned earlier that the subconscious mind has 2 primary objectives and 2 measures for whether a suggestion is accepted or rejected. The 2 measures are primary motivators, and they are the determining factors for all other motivators. These 4 core factors are the drivers of every action we take or avoid taking, so it's important that you know what they are and how they function. We will be revisiting these often in this series because understanding these powerful drivers, how and why they work, are essential to becoming irresistibly influential. We've covered the two primary objectives, physical survival and conceptual survival, which is the drive to experience mental and emotional well-being or happiness. The primary motivators are rooted in desire, like a single coin with two sides. On one side is the desire to increase pleasure, and on the other, the desire to minimize or avoid pain. We move toward things that increase pleasure and away from things that cause pain or discomfort. Ultimately, all of the rules of the subconscious mind and every single thing we are and do or avoid doing occurs as a result of these four factors. By applying the four primary factors to techniques used to influence, you'll see how they come into play and why, and can eventually adjust techniques to suit yourself. Let's apply the primary factors to understanding how and why the easy agreement technique works. Conceptual survival, which you now know as mental and emotional well-being or happiness, is the primary objective at work in this technique, and the primary motivator is to increase pleasure. Being right increases pleasure, where being wrong reduces pleasure and increases discomfort. So we naturally seek to be right and resist being wrong. The easy agreement technique works because each time agreement is reached, the subconscious mind experiences pleasure, which activates dopamine and endorphins, two of the brain's feel-good chemicals. Dopamine plays a major role in reward-motivated behavior, and endorphins reduce stress. These feel-good chemicals increase the sensation of pleasure, and the brain's response is to seek more of it. Each agreement produces a shot of feel-good chemicals and creates an association between agreeing with you and feeling good, so continuing to agree becomes the preferred action. You can use any of the four basic human needs, belonging, appreciation, significance, or ego gratification, to build agreement around. You do that by asking questions that you know the individual will agree with. I'll use belonging as an example. The strategy for getting agreement through belonging would be to get the individual into a "we're in this together," or "I belong in this special group," or "I'm just like you" mindset, or to have them tap into something you know to be important to them, such as family, money, or growing their business. If you don't know the person well enough to know what's important to them, begin with an exploratory question, such as "What do you like about?" and then relate the question to a pertinent topic. For example, when talking to a gardener, you might ask, "What do you like most about gardening?" Or, "What do you like most about your work?" if you're talking to someone in the workplace. If you reply to whatever the individual identifies with "Yes, I enjoy that too," you've activated the "I'm just like you" mindset. Or, depending on the person and circumstance, you might ask, "What don't you like about gardening?" or "What don't you like about work?" Because some people can agree on what's wrong easier than on what's right. Use what you already know about the individual to formulate your first question. Then, using what they disclose, add another question you can agree on, and then another. Those three small agreements put you and the other person in rapport and condition their brain to continue agreeing with you. You can use being in it together, belonging in a special group, or the idea that we're just alike for the other three basic needs too. All you have to do is slant them toward whichever need takes priority. To slant "we're in it together" toward appreciation, for example, you would say or imply that you're happy or feel fortunate to be in that situation with that particular individual. You could slant it toward significance by stating or implying that being in that situation together will make a significant difference for you or someone else. And you could slant it toward ego gratification by stating or implying that being in the situation together is your first and best option. Certainly a wise assertion for something like a marriage proposal, right? Since belonging, appreciation, significance, and ego gratification are all basic human needs, any approach you take that taps into one or more of these will be effective. These are just examples here. Be sure that your comments and observations are genuine. If they aren't, you move into the territory of selfish manipulation, which is unethical and a good way to lose rapport and trust. The other technique, subtle suggestion, purposefully uses a linguistic technique called presuppositions, which are implied truths designed to direct the feelings, thoughts, and actions of people and tap into beliefs they already hold to be true. If you're familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, you're likely familiar with presuppositions. Advertisers mastered subtle suggestion ages ago, and large global organizations like McDonald's are masters at using this technique. That's how McDonald's got to be a global phenomenon, in spite of the fact that the food they serve is not especially healthy and not the best tasting. Their ads imply that, though. The presupposition behind the thing you want when you order salad is that salads don't satisfy the appetite and McDonald's hamburgers do. It also suggests that although you think you want to eat healthier, what you really want is to be satisfied, and McDonald's hamburgers provide that satisfying meal. The Big Beefy Bliss and the 10,000 Taste Buds ads also imply that the food is delicious and satisfying. The reality may be much different than the messages imply, but that doesn't keep millions of people from frequenting McDonald's. That's because when the subconscious mind goes running down the pleasure path, facts don't stand a chance. Another example of a sentence that contains powerful presuppositions is Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." Like advertisers, many politicians are masters at putting people in emotional trances with subtle suggestions. The presuppositions in "Make America Great Again" are that America used to be great, that it is not great now, that it could be great again if things went back to the way they used to be, and that Trump can make that happen. If an individual agrees with the first two presuppositions, that America used to be great and could be great again, those feel-good chemicals kick in, and from there, the individual is running on automatic, and any facts to the contrary get filtered out. Because the subconscious mind is always seeking the path of pleasure, and being right leads to pleasure, once agreement is established, people go into a trance state that ensures that any facts that contradict the feel-good agreement are ignored or railed against. The need to be right is very powerful. It leaves people wondering how on earth people on a different path could possibly believe what they seem to believe, and keeps them fighting for their own position. For a subtle suggestion to work, you need to know the beliefs and desires of the people you want to influence. "Make America Great Again" would only work for conservative American patriots who believe the way things used to be is better. The slogan is not as appealing to progressive people who don't think the past was all that great. A better presupposition for that group would be "Making America Greater Than Ever." Here, the presupposition is that America has always been great, but could be even greater. And the word "making" implies that the person who the slogan is associated with is actively working to make that happen. Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign slogan, "Stronger Together," also has a presupposition most people would agree with, but it conjures up images of teamwork which has a corporate feel and lacks emotional appeal. One thing the American people were concerned with about Clinton was that she might be too wrapped up with the Wall Street crowd, and this slogan didn't do anything to ease those concerns. Using a slogan like "Making America Greater Than Ever" together would have still suggested that there's strength in numbers and that Hillary works with citizens to get things done, and it would have avoided the corporate feel and added all the other presuppositions that people who think America could be even greater could get behind. To use presuppositions as purposefully as you must to be successful at influencing through subtle suggestion, you'll need to spend more time studying examples. I've provided a way for you to get more, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. Before we get to that, I want to bring everything back down to the basics and simplify the concepts in a way that makes putting them into action fast and easy. We're going to use the power of 3 to do that. 3 is a rather magical number for the mind in that it recalls things in threes quite easily. The power of 3 is a principle that suggests that things that come in threes are more interesting, more effective, and more likely to be remembered than other numbers of things. Consider some stories and ideas that have staying power. The Three Musketeers, the Three Stooges, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, the Three Little Pigs. There are generally 3 medals or trophies awarded to the winners of athletic events and talent contests: gold, silver, and bronze. 3 strikes and you're out in baseball. The 3 wise men who brought gifts to the infant Jesus. 3 plays a prominent role throughout history, probably because of that very fact. So, to tap into this fabulous power, I'm going to wrap up this and every segment with 3 sets of 3 power tips, each designed to speed your progress. The first set of 3 is the 3 common factors that the easy agreement and subtle suggestion techniques tap into. The primary objective for both techniques is conceptual survival. The primary motivation is to increase pleasure, and the primary desire is to be right. Anytime you're seeking easy agreement or to influence others through subtle suggestion, remember these three factors. They're the power behind the behavior. You can influence anyone when you can add to their sense of well-being, increase their sense of pleasure, and appease their desire to be right. The second set of three covers three important success strategies. To succeed with the easy agreement and subtle suggestion techniques, you'll need to know what those you seek to influence care about. You can start with the basic motivators, but in many instances, you'll need to look deeper. Significance is an example of that. To know what significance looks like for an individual requires further investigation. Is significance tied to family or some other kind of relationship? Is it feeling masterful in some area or personally powerful? Maybe it's that they can bring order to chaos, or maybe it's status. Influence is the means to get what you want by helping others get what they want, and you can only do that when you know what those you seek to influence want and care about. Influence is a subconscious process, so be sure you're tapping into motivation at the subconscious level through emotion, sensation, imagination, and story. And to keep and expand your power to influence, be sure you stay honest, ethical, and trustworthy. These are the foundations of influence, and it's how you can always feel good about yourself and the reputation that precedes you. The third set of three covers fast action steps you can take to keep your ability to influence irresistibly expanding. The first step is to power up. You do that by gathering the information you need to get the outcomes you want. Not more than you need, that will slow you down, and not less than you need, that will keep you functioning below your capacity. But when it comes to subconscious processes, which as you know are at the core of influence, knowledge is definitely power. The more you know about how the mind works, what triggers certain responses, and what methods elicit those responses, the easier it will be for you to manage your own mind and irresistibly influence others. Subtle suggestion depends heavily on purposeful presuppositions, that is, strategically crafted sentences that point people in the direction you want them to go. There are far too many of them to cover in a short segment like this, so to add to your store of knowledge, I've provided more examples for you. You can download the free guide Using Presuppositions for Irresistible Influence at www.starperformancesystems.com/II-report1. To master the art of irresistible influence, you'll need to practice. And the best way to keep your interest high as you perfect a skill is to approach learning as a game, to play purposefully. The concept of play, or what feels like play, triggers the pleasure signals in the brain and motivates you to seek more. We learn faster and easier when we approach learning as an adventure, and we transfer the learning from short-term to long-term through practice. To continue practicing anything, we either have to see it as necessary to our survival or as enjoyable. When we see it as enjoyable rather than as necessary, the process of learning becomes enhancing rather than stress-producing, and we gain benefits far beyond just learning. The whole body responds favorably to the positive feedback loop. Practice results in both chemical and physical changes in the brain that produce functional and structural long-term benefits. Practicing the game of irresistible influence is infinitely fascinating and is one of the most valuable games you'll ever play. When you reach the top level in this game, you win in every area of life. So go out and purposefully play with these two influencers. Even if you don't get the results you want in the beginning, keep at it. Practice makes perfect, and perfecting these two strategies will move you 2 steps closer to being an irresistible influencer. In this segment of the Irresistible Influence series, we covered the easy agreement and subtle suggestion techniques. Both of these techniques work with the 4 basic needs and tap into the subconscious need to be right. In the next Irresistible Influence segment, we'll cover 2 techniques for tapping into another subconscious driver, energy conservation. You'll learn 2 powerful techniques, directing decisions and compliance codes, where I'll share 4 powerful influencers most people find almost impossible to resist. So power up, play purposefully, and practice the techniques we just covered. And I'll see you in the next session.